Hello, everybody. Good to see you. I might be starting like almost a minute late. I was talking for a little while. um, Welcome, everybody. Those of you who are live, those of you who are listening to this later, listening or watching this later, you might watch it later as a recorded video on my YouTube channel, or you might be listening to it on the podcast that'll come out tomorrow evening. So, welcome everybody. Today, I thought we would talk about some of the things that are going on in some of the states. As you may know, I have a bunch of Facebook groups, one for each. Hey, Larry from UK, good to see you. 7 p.m. there. Yep. So I will check in on the chat messages every little while, but I wanted to introduce today's topics. I thought we had a good episode, a good question and answer session last time where I kind of took a lot of questions. They all seem to center around the topics that we have on Facebook. As I've been pushing that out, I came out with it a couple of months ago to start a Facebook group for every state, territory, federal district, and also one for the world. The one for the world is called Professor Slots Enthusiasts. Each of the ones for the different states in the United States would be Professor Slots. Hi, Russ from Alabama. Hey, Steve. Steve, I talk to you all the time, but you know that. So I started these Facebook groups, and if you want to go to, if you're in a U.S. state, territory, or federal district, you can go to that one where we're building more and more people joining it. I don't advertise the private groups, so nobody sees anything except if you're in the group. There's no sharing option available from Facebook, so it's all private. People seem to appreciate that, but it does mean a slightly slower growth because it's not in anybody's timeline other than your own if you are a member of the group. And I will have to actually look and make sure you are an individual, not a company, not a spammer, not somebody whose Facebook profile is 3 minutes old, or something like that, to make sure we keep out the scammers. But it is for you to meet and talk, but perhaps meet, certainly chat with, share your experiences with people from your area. Now, if you want to visit Las Vegas every year, a couple times a year, feel free to join the Nevada group. Hey, Jan. Nice profile name. I like that. I saw that earlier. That was cool. But this is where you would go to meet your fellow slots players from your area or those states in which you would gamble, and play slots, and it's meant to be for you. I don't use anything from there except to listen for trends and kind of talk about some of the trends here. So it is private, but it's only a few months old, and it takes a little while to accumulate community members. And if you want to join, the easy way, the Facebook link is a bunch of numbers. So I made it easy. I made a convenient link for each one. If you type in professorslots.com / and then the 2 letters postal designation for your state, it'll zip you right on over to Facebook. Won't even go to my page. It'll just send you right directly to that state's Facebook slots community. Feel free to join. I'll send you a welcome. You'll meet other people. I tell you right now, I'll ask you what your favorite casino is. You don't have to have a favorite casino, but which ones do you frequent, and then everybody sort of builds community and gets connected. But there's been a lot of discussion on there, and I thought it would be worthwhile for everybody if we talked about the different circumstances that you might find in different gaming jurisdictions, shall we say. My focus, so far has been on the United States, and I hope to expand someday, but I've got to get the United States a little bit more nailed down. I've been extending myself into Canada, and certainly I'll probably always be limited to English-speaking countries. But I wanted to talk to you about a few things. And this whole session, this question and answer session, is centered around a video that I have on YouTube. Let me see if I can share that for you on my other screen. I will share that. Yes. There you are. So in 25 seconds, you'll see a screen from my website. And then I'll quickly share the YouTube video. So if you are looking at the YouTube video, I can't really point to it very well. It's kind of down here where I'm kind of flashing it. There's a title. It's called Assessing Casinos for Success. You may have seen my article on my webpage, which is right there in the front page, like the getting started articles right there. That is what I want you to maybe go to. I created an updated video. I need to insert it into that page, but I've created an updated video that was really for YouTube, and I never really built a channel before, and I was looking to do that, and so I built one for with a good thumbnail, as they call it, a secondary title, all these technical things about having a YouTube channel that I've been trying to get better at, and it's about which casino is best for you. I decided to call it that, Assessing Casinos for Success, because I don't think it's realistic to say, well, there are states where you have better gaming regulations than you do in other states, but I don't really think it's an option to move. I don't expect to have too much of that going on. Well, gaming regulations in Washington are terrible. I think I'll go over to Oregon. I just don't expect that sort of thing to happen. And so I said, you're assuming you stay in your state, this is what is available to you. And I wanted to cover a few topics on that, a few aspects of that. And because it's become very relatable to a bunch of different groups of the 56, 57 that I have on Facebook. I know, crazy to have that many, but I'm trying to help. And one of the things is get people's opinions and have them share and see where their frustrations are and try to answer their questions. And, this all sounds like a Q&A, right? So I've been doing Q&As constantly with these Facebook groups for months, and there's some interesting questions. So my streaming is a little bit low. I will switch back to something that might work a little better. Come back to me. Okay. Right. So before I get quite too far into that, I wanted to check the chat here. Hey, Larry. Hey, Steve. Hey, Russ. Hey, Jan. Howdy, Dean. Good to see you. Denise, hello. And Joe, good to see you as well. Nice cozy group here. Make sure, hey, Maggie. I'm glad to see you here as well. I kind of feel like you're a core group. As I grow, as the podcast originally grew, as the website grew, and my new YouTube stuff. I think this is our 12th or 13th live Q&A, but it's been a rock and roll time. And it's just growing. We're just growing. And so I feel like each of you are those that are dedicated. That's great. Hey, Rick. And good to see you. And just keep in mind that there's going to be a time when hundreds of people are going to be on here, and you're here first, and I very much appreciate that. So as things get a little busier over time, you're here first. Awesome. Okay, so there was a couple of things going on with Oklahoma in the last few months. If you're not in Oklahoma, you may not have heard about too much of this. And I'm not telling you because you're from Oklahoma. I'm not telling you because you might move there or gamble there. I'm just talking about tribal casinos and tribal gaming compacts. A lot. So 1989 was when a federal act was put into place, the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act, that allowed tribal gaming that was more than tribal ceremonies. This is a federal law protecting tribes and allowing them to have income from gambling. And it let them do any type of gambling that was skill-based, which the state that they were located in, the reservation was located in, didn't prohibit. Like, all gambling can be prohibited in the state constitution, like Utah right now. And if they did have, they can't have tribal casinos there because it's not permitted. But then you have other states where they had lotteries or bingo, and so tribal casinos don't even have to ask the state to have competition games, often bingo, and known as Class 2 games. And one of the difficulties, Class 1 being tribal ceremonies, Class 2 being competitive games, and Class 3 being basically games of chance that you might find slot machines in Las Vegas. And these three types, are actually the definition for all states because it's the only federal law that defines a gambling term, right? So like Kansas, they say all gambling is illegal in their constitution. But you can have poker and you can have craps and you can have this and you can have that because they don't consider it gambling. You're like, what? How could they not consider it gambling? Well, they can do that because there's no, gambling terms are state by state. It's what's in the state laws. So it's a little bit confusing on some of these things. But in Oklahoma, if you're in any state with a tribal casino, in Oklahoma, this IGRA Act of 1989 came out, and every tribe that was federally recognized went, we really ought to do that because, we could use some funding for education and this and that. And, there weren't too many businesses available, certainly no businesses anything like what a casino might make, right? And so, hey, Derek. Hey, Derek. Don't tell anybody that. They might call me up. I remember that. I thought, that's a lifetime fan right there. In any case, in Oklahoma, and other states that have tribal casinos, they got those tribal gaming compacts. You have to have an agreement with the state if it's something like games of chance. And you negotiate that and you submit it to the United States government through the U.S. Department of Interior, and they approve it. And then you can open something other than a competition style, bingo style gaming hall, community gaming hall. You can actually open a casino, as you might see in Las Vegas. And so they rush those through. The state usually had income, and they were loving that. Ever since World War II, worldwide governments have just loved the idea of getting gaming revenue. Almost all of them. Very few have not. Well, we can get into that. But I don't think those tribal gaming compacts were well written. They came out so quickly. The U.S., the states, the tribes, they didn't know what was going to happen. You didn't know how the gaming industry in the United States was going to evolve. And so the tribal gaming compacts are not perfect. In some states, like Oklahoma, they weren't clear about this, but other states are more clear in their tribal gaming compacts. They never have to be renewed. They're to perpetuity. To perpetuity, they will never be updated. Now, Oklahoma, and then getting to this, Oklahoma had a conflict, shall we say, perhaps that's too strong of a word, disagreement with the Oklahoma state governor, who said, oh, time's up. We got to renew those contracts, those gaming compacts. And the tribe said, no, they're to perpetuity. Hey, Wayne, good to see you here. And this is all about money. This is all about revenue, income tax revenue, gambling income tax revenue, because who knew Oklahoma was going to have, more casinos than any other state? Certainly tribal casinos. Actually, any casinos. California is the second. They got a bunch of non-tribal card rooms, and then tribal casinos with slot machines. And they're number two, around 60, almost 70 locations. But Oklahoma has got over 100, and it's a little hard to tell some of the convenience stores if they're should count or not, but the ones that do count, there's at least over 108 of those. So, uh, what do you do? I've had a few people on the Oklahoma page, slots community, say, "Well, I'm going to go someplace else where they have them." Well, I have written an article on every state, excuse me, at least twice, some of them 3 times, and because I go through it every year, one a week, and my golly, not many states have tribal casinos which have a payout, theoretical payout limit applied to them in the compact. Not very few states, and very few states also provide a few more, but still very few have the tribes report gaming statistics, return statistics, so you know how it worked out. Oklahoma has neither, like a lot of other states, and they're, I would say, not the worst state. What are they doing? And it's quite the number of casinos. But someone was saying, I'm going to go someplace else. I said, well, make sure it's not the state of Washington, because guess what? They're worse. It isn't the same kind of situation. Their casinos, tribal casinos, don't control their own odds of winning. It's done by I'll say the state lottery. Gets a little special here. It's unique. They made the state of Washington made a lottery system only for the tribal states, tribal casinos. So there's 2 lottery systems in the state of Washington. I did say it was unique. One is the lottery you might expect. The second one is a tribal lottery system for video lottery terminals. And what's more special is all other, best I know, there might be one other, but I don't think so. All other video lottery terminal machines controlled by the lottery are based on the draw lottery, where people buy their tickets and then the number's picked. That's not the case in Washington. Washington isn't based off of draw lottery tickets. They're based off of scratch lottery tickets, digital. So they decide which one's the winner, bundle all these together, send them out electronically to the casino, and then there's no random number generator. And that means Washington, well, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, but that means Washington doesn't, the casinos in Washington don't have business practices that allow them to affect the odds of winning. So they are responsible for determining whether or not they meet the theoretical payout required by the compact or the gaming commission. The gaming commission is the lottery, and the lottery does that itself. And that means they can't make the slot machine by the door higher odds. They can't do any of that. So it becomes, it's the old methods of money management and money management, and there's a few other methods that will work to try to make a winning. But most of the stuff that I talk about is based on the casino being able to control the odds and then doing something. I wonder sometimes, Arrow Direct Fong, if people are actually in a casino. I doubt so, because when they're watching the live Q&A, because I imagine it's probably a little bit loud. But anyway, Arrow Direct Fong is on his way on a bus to an Indian casino as we speak. Let us know if you get there. Affiliate T, hello. So the reason why I started off with the discussion mentioning my assessing casinos for success is alternative title would be assessing your state for success. Before you even step into a casino, see what your state has to offer. And that's what I talk about, the things, several things to do before you visit the casino, because these days most states have several available within a driving distance, and one's better than the other. And you can find, if your state has the records, you can look it up, and then you help yourself, point here, point there. Pretty soon we're talking real money. So if you start by looking at what's in your state, and I need to talk about this because we should calibrate. People in a state, Washington, Oklahoma, and so far it's been kind of like tribal casinos only, which doesn't really matter too much with the state. It might be some small differences. They aren't happy with the gaming regulations, whether it be tribal casinos or the state gaming regulations. They're not happy. And you know why those state gaming regulations and tribal gaming compacts haven't been changed? It's because nobody talks about it. I talk about it. And so everybody who comes through my system of things that I talk about and the way I look at playing slots and winning at slots, which before wasn't even possible unless you were lucky. Now we're looking at gaming patterns and taking advantage and figuring out what those are and then making the most of them, as well as being safe and all the other things I like to talk about. So what does, let's have a show of hands. I know I have one person who said they're from Alabama, and I believe I know where some of the rest of you are. Derek, the guy from Delaware, who called me up one day, and I was like, John Friedel, and he's like, John Friedel? Professor Slots? And I'm like, yeah. Wow, I'm your big fan. And I'm like, okay. Then I think you pulled over to the side of the road, just to show you I remember. You pull over to the side of the road because an ambulance had to pass you. It sounded like an ambulance and not the police. So, but sorry, I don't mean to tease. I'm from Flint, Michigan, so this reminds me of home. But yeah, that left an impression, Derek. So, show of hands. I mean, comment. What state are you from? If you haven't already said, Russ said he's from Alabama. I know where some of the rest of you are from, but Jingwok from Minnesota. Where else do we have? Delaware. Yep. Chat if it's possible for you to do so. Denise, that's. I love these side conversations I see between the people in the chat. Denise told Aero Direct Fong if Oklahoma, no, Minnesota, Texas, Wisconsin, Las Vegas, California, Pennsylvania. Aero Direct Fong, you might not be in Oklahoma for a little while if you're on the bus. Okay, so we've got different situations in each one of those states, and this is where I'm happy to talk here and answer your questions, but some of the details are specific to the state. So while I haven't pitched this very much, it is an option for you to go to professorslots.com/consult, and we will go over the details of the state that you're interested in and see what specifics apply. Washington and Oklahoma, that is a nut I'm trying to crack. Okay, there are people, but don't worry too much, because I've had people say, I'll just gamble in another state. I'm like, well, that other state might not be better. Like, for instance, if you have state gaming regulations that don't have a theoretical payout or don't have a return statistics on what actually happened, there's still things to do. So Jingwok has a question about Minnesota. Anybody who wants to know my general thoughts without talking about where you are in the state and which casinos are closest to you and that sort of thing, but in general for the state, I've made I have articles for each one, and it's professorslots.com/ and then the 2-letter postal designation, MN. So professorslots.com/MN will take you directly to my article, and you can read each section. The one on payout returns is actually the second from last, just before the summary. Nico, play in Vegas, sure. This is where it gets a little difficult to give individual answers, which nobody might care about because they're not in that state. But Nigo, I have an article. Besides, if you go to professorslots.com/NV, there's all the way to the bottom, there's some references. And one of them is another article that I wrote about 7 secrets to winning if during your next visit to Las Vegas, you might want to take a look at that. If you're a local, then you might know some of that because I picked up some of the tips in there from locals. But do you know every one of them? Check it out. So I've tried to put together this resource. Justin, good evening. Southern Alabama. Okay. I guess he's talking to you, Larry, if it's evening. By the way, if you'd care to subscribe to my YouTube channel, that would be awesome. You'll be made aware of my weekly posts or weekly Q&A sessions on Saturdays when they're coming up. You can subscriptions are important to me. I am looking to build this site, this YouTube channel, to the point of being able to make a little bit of revenue to pay for some better cameras. They're expensive, and some portable equipment, some other things to make this a better experience for you. So if you subscribe, it doesn't charge you anything, and it helps me grow, reach people. Eventually, I'll have a selling product. Right now, I have the paperback, and you can see it over there in the corner. But here's the paperback, Learning to Win, available on Amazon. Also available as an ebook. And earlier today, I've gotten maybe 20 hours. It's hard to find the time. 20 hours left to edit the audiobook because people have been asking for that. So end of last year, I recorded it, and I've been slowly editing it in my spare time. So I'll get that out to you. That's all I'm really selling besides the consulting. But email me if you have a question. It's just that eventually my emails are going to get shorter and shorter in response because more and more people are emailing me. So just keep that in mind as we grow. This is not a static business. All that's happening is growth. Because you know what? I've had people say who have searched far and wide. I've looked for good sites, but I haven't looked, for haven't joined clubs and other things in other sites. But I'm told nobody talks about the stuff that I talk about. I think they will. It certainly does work. I don't mean to say it certainly does work. It certainly does work. And it explains things where explanations were not available. Now, they would have explained all this stuff 20 years ago if it existed 20 years ago, but it didn't. Sure, there were casinos, but there weren't these casino business practices with these operating systems that have been put in place since about 2012, more and more of them, eventually all of them. I'll just tell you like it is. Enjoy reading your articles, has made me aware of so much than just dropping coins. Yeah. Right? Nobody was more shocked than me than not finding anything out there. I was winning so much, and I talked to a coworker, and he's like, well, you've read all the books, right? We're both PhDs. And he's like, you read all the books, right? And I'm like, there's no books. I mean, there's some books on, not on strategies, but on like coupons, and American Casino Guide is great. All these Las Vegas coupons, and a few articles, that haven't really changed over the years, very little. But well worth it. But that was like beautiful, but that was it. And so he's looking at me, and I'm like, there's no books. And he says, you should write one. And I'm like, And he came back the next day, and he says, I was thinking about that. You should write one. And I'm like, no, that's what I was thinking. I should write one. So it took a year, and I did. And it's available for $15, $16, depending on the ebook or the paperback. And that's really, it's this, Learning to Win on Amazon. So to be clear, I have researched all the states. You should research yours to see what's available. But the reason it drove me to include this topic in today's Q&A is that don't be disappointed. Okay. I don't mean to share something personal, but I have type 2 diabetes. A lot of people do. It happened in graduate school, and I don't reason to get into all the details, but I didn't know I had it. They, unbeknownst to me, stopped testing for it in the Student Health Center, and my blood sugars were going up and up and up and up, and I didn't know what was going on. I was a little more fatigued, but I, didn't have a blood sugar measurement, and I found out I had type 2 diabetes. And you know what? I wasn't upset. I was glad. I was glad to know. So, yeah, who checks the state gaming commissions? I've found very few people who, join my Facebook group or buy the book or talk to me and email me who check their state gaming regulations. I'm sorry if it's a bit of a shock on the letdown on what your state offers, but aren't you glad you know? And then there's the other thing, okay? Better to know than not know. Point number one. Point number two, if we grow, this won't be a business anymore. This could be a movement. We could have a voting block. I mean, we're well short of having, 1 million people or anything like that, per city, a big city or something. But, what would it take to start lobbying state governments to fix some of these disadvantages, things that aren't protecting players well enough, that aren't, I mean, they kind of, governments are kind of doing it without really getting a lot of input from voters, and some of them are getting it right, and others are not so much, and they just haven't heard from the voters. But if we could get together a message, and I know it's a ways out, but if we could get together a message, you are a state resident, you vote. We could use that. I vote in Ohio, well, it's a dream, and we'll see if we grow big enough to start having an impact and making some positive changes to your state gaming regulations, and maybe even tribal gaming compacts when it's time for them to be renewed, if they're going to be renewed. I know I'm dreaming. It is pie in the sky, 5 years, 10 years away. But, I've done some, I would say, in my mind, fairly extraordinary stuff, just because, what did somebody say on one of the training things? Keep on thinking outside the box, John. And I came back with, what? There's a box? Rick, you were born in Flint, Michigan. Me too. Have you been to the University of Michigan campus, the one in Flint? On the downstairs in the science building, Murchie Science Building, all the way in the bottom floor, there's a Foucault pendulum with my name on it, and a picture of me without gray hair and a cheesy mustache, which I had for like 17 years, wearing a suit. So if you happen to get to walk through that area during daylight, there's a pendulum down there. It's about 20 years old now. I did it for my college graduation with physics and engineering degrees, my senior projects. Right, long time ago. Let's see, Wayne, Vancouver, British Columbia. I've been focusing more on Ontario, and a little bit of what's the province that's east of there with Vancouver, with Montreal. Forget. Those are the two that I've been finding out. There's one with Newfoundland, and I found some of the gaming regulations, the gaming jurisdictions for those Canadian provinces, but I haven't gone too much into Vancouver. Although you've got a couple of nice casinos there. The people in Alaska, they can reach down into Vancouver a little easier. They don't have too many in Alaska, so that's kind of like the nearest one. And there's one in Canada just on the other side of the border from Alaska. It's got like 50 slot machines. All of Canada, if they want to play a slot machine, goes there. Hey, aloha from Hawaii. That's awesome. Thank you, everybody, for sharing where you're from. So I would say, Jingwalk, Minnesota isn't as bad as Oklahoma or Washington. So count yourself lucky. The details are in the page I was telling you about. Southern Alabama, playing Vegas. Thank you. Wise Virgin, hey, I hadn't heard from you. I wondered. Outside of Vegas, when is the busiest months of the year for casinos? Late April through all of August? No. Close. I was surprised to find if you go to the annual financial reports submitted to the SEC.gov for the two of the biggest uh, uh, gaming companies that make also the software for operating casinos and software for games, SGC, Scientific Games Corporation, and IGT. I have articles on both that I review each year. Those financial reports are clear that they have to report in clear language to their stakeholders that any layman can understand. And one of the paragraphs, one of the sections is about seasonality, and they say it's maybe late April, maybe third week. I'm not sure if third week of April is late. Second half of April, a little more comfortable, through maybe the beginning of August, not quite all of August, because students, K through 12 students, go back to school, and so it's basically when the students are out of, you know, high school, secondary school, depending on where you're at in the world, before college. Uh, Parents will take their children on vacation, or they'll, be, um, they go on trips, and when they go on trips, they go to casinos more. So I think a lot of people go year round. I do, but there are families that might find themselves on vacation and enjoy going to casino, and that's enough to make it a seasonal business. How do we take advantage of that? Since it all comes back to that's a business practice, right? Not something casinos have a lot of control over, but it's a business practice. Why don't I just tell you how to take advantage of that? Check the casino in the first half of April, because what's happening is they're getting ready for the crowds. Okay. And you might be hiring a bunch of people and they might not know quite what they're doing, and you can take advantage of that. So a great time is then. Let's see. Um, Thanks, Rick. Uh, Impressive. All four of the casinos I go to have a giveaway night. Based on your info, should I go to one of them tomorrow around 4 a.m.? And since it's still the weekend, wait until 4 a.m. on Monday. Uh, hmm. That, uh, can you figure out whether or not there's a finale? I've seen giveaways every night in the weekend. In fact, I've seen every weekend being a giveaway of something. But really, was it the finale? That's the one you want to pick out. For yeah. So tonight's going to be a giveaway, but look for the big one. Cars are good. It's if you've been to it before, get an idea what the crowds are, and pick the biggest one. The morning after the biggest one. That's what you're most looking for, because what I'm trying to point out here is when you have an adjustment, when the casino does an adjustment the next morning after a busy night, they don't have to do much of adjustment if they have a smaller event, because they'll be more likely to hit the mark, right, and not have to do an adjustment or not much of an adjustment. But when it's a big crowd, it's harder for them to get it right. And so there's more likely to be, more money given back, and more likely to be you that gets that money back the next morning. Also, we had got feedback on Super Bowl, right? Uh, People, they, the Saturday before the Sunday of Super Bowl was a busy day. I mean, I had all kinds of emails. It's national. I didn't know that the Saturday before Super Bowl was going to be a big day. I mean, someone knew that they were going to have a giveaway on the Friday night, right? The Friday before Super Bowl Sunday, and so they went in Saturday morning, and nobody had, or not, a lot of people were just milling about at 4 o'clock in the morning. Never had that many people stay that late. So check out each event. If it's a regular event, then you can get an idea. If it's not a regular event, you got to get used to what your casino does for Derby Day, what your casino does for Super Bowl, particularly the day before, and see if it affects things. Because the day before Super Bowl is maybe as big as Super Bowl. People go home for Super Bowl. They go to the casino on the Saturday before. Apparently, who knew? And you might have a local celebration. Blueberry Festival. I think who is it? Rick would get that one from Montrose. That's small city town where I'm near. But they celebrate these special events, and so look for that. Learn your casino. So, learn your state, learn your casinos, and next year I'll be ready for Saturday before Super Bowl. Then good to know. I also wanted to mention something Steve had talked to me about. I had said something before about make sure you talk to the casino employees, right? They see a lot of things, but I wasn't as specific as I perhaps should have been. Listen to them, ask them questions, but make your own decisions. The things we talk about here, about the casino business practices that we can turn on their head. Tonight's the finale. There you go. See, or at one casino, that's your target. But if you are talking to people, Tussie just asked a question about those 4 casinos, and she said tonight's the finale, but one of them might be bigger than the other. But getting to my point, if you're talking to a casino employees, don't expect that casino employee to be me, okay? They're going to tell you stuff. 2 things. They're going to tell you 2 things. One is facts. The second thing is interpretation of those facts. Interpretation is up to you. They may tell you whatever, and you have to decide whether or not it's real as far as their interpretation, because there's very few security guards and slot attendants who are currently part of my audience. And they don't know a lot of these concepts. They've seen a lot, but it's on you to decide whether or not what they're saying is helpful. Okay? I could wish they were all knowledgeable, but as I've mentioned in the past, they can't gamble at their casino. If they've worked there for 17 years, right, Wayne? Right, Steve? Then, by golly, they haven't gambled there in 17 years. So it's all kind of watching people, and I like the idea. I like that idea. That's safe. I've talked about how, like the movie 21 and card counting and blackjack, when it first came out in that fashion, when it became a little more popular, I made a movie about it eventually. When that happened, casinos had to respond. But right now, they're not responding to us doing these things, partly because it's new, but partly because it's going to be hard for them to accept, after 17 years of nothing like this happening, that the technology has changed. Now, the IT guy that works at corporate headquarters for the casino gets it, but the slot attendants and security guards and the managers that have worked there for a decade or two, they're going to have a hard time accepting this, just like some of this audience has had a hard time, or people have been trying to pull in, it's voluntary. They get really upset because everything is different. And I'm like, I'm sorry, man, 2020, change happens. Dean, you make a good point, right? I thought about that when Steve was telling me about the security guard that he was talking to who walked him around the casino. I mean, my goodness, walked him around the casino? Aren't they busy? They're lonely, okay? You can't have too many slot attendants in working one area. They are all assigned areas of the casino, and there might be one and there might be two, and they're busy, and they don't get to talk to anybody but customers. They don't talk to, unless they're on break or something, talking in the break room, which is small, by the way, because they need the space for the gaming machines on the floor. They're lonely. It's part of the job of being in a casino when the casino employees, slot attendants, and everybody's is pretty isolated. Despite the crowds, they're isolated and lonely. So don't take too harsh advantage of that, but ask them questions. And I always say, it doesn't hurt to be nice. And see what they have to say, and then think about how it applies to the stuff we talk about, the articles that I write about, the things in the book, and see what makes sense. Again, I can't come to you and visit you and walk you through your casino for a week or a month. It's just not practical. I have to talk to a bunch of people, like right now. So I'm not trying to fish for you, as the analogy goes. I'm trying to teach you to fish. So yes, talk to the slot attendants. Talk to, anybody who's not like the hosts are kind of busy. They run, one of their patrons walks into the casino, puts their card in a slot machine, and they have to run over there within 30 seconds. So you might not be able to get a long conversation with a host because of that, unless you're top tier. But talk to them and then evaluate what they ask good questions and think about the answers. Don't have them tell you what to do. You think about the answers and then you make decisions and maybe ask more questions. One of the things I wanted to bring up is I call you guys, each one of you, a slots enthusiast. Okay? And altogether, we're slots enthusiasts. But I don't think that's a great name. I think that's a fine name, but I think you should name yourself. Now, I think it was Steve that I was talking to, maybe it was Jan. People were asking me questions about stuff, and I'm like, well, we need a better name than Slots Enthusiasts, but I want you guys to come up with it. And by the way, Slots Batman, that's taken. The Batman part, it's copyrighted. So, you need to be a detective. You need to be an experimenter. And we can't use Slots Batman. So we should come up with a name. No hurry, no pressure. Be interested in what you think we should call ourselves. Team Friedel. That's my last name. Team Friedel would please my father, but perhaps we won't use that one. Okay, so questions here. Wise Virgin, do you think the busy months, the percentages are internally adjusted higher? They can't, state by state, okay? State by state. If a state has a theoretical payout limit, they can't drop us below a certain point. And as many as the states are that have theoretical payout lower limit, minimum limit, the casinos stay well above that. It might be 75%, and the casino would never drop below 85% because it's just bad for business to go to 75%. People would just hate that casino, and it would really impact their business more than you might expect. But there's also, your state might have a maximum limit. The surprising number of states say 100%, no more than 100%. And that limits the casino, depending on how the wording is, because it can be over the lifetime of the machine. And maybe the new machines at the front of the casino that don't stick around might be not the ones to play because they're only there for 2 weeks and then they're gone because they weren't successful. The ones that have been there for 10 years, it's a longer average, but too many details here. Again, stay general. What does your state say? And they have to operate within the law. All right. And so if you know what the limits are, then you can, and even how the limits are expressed, whether it's over the lifetime of the game or per wager, some of the wording, and I put all that into my state articles. I dig that out for you, but it's significant. I wouldn't put it there if it wasn't significant to look at these things. Now, when you don't have these limits, like in Oklahoma, then you don't have that, and a lot of them don't have that. But they're allowed to work within their limits. I'll give you an example. The best state regulations, fairest to the players, is Nevada. All right? But even then, there's loopholes. It's not even a loophole. It's sort of what the casinos do as a business practice. they're so tight. I mean, I don't mean to say tight as in theoretical returns, but the casino regulations are so clear that there's few things that can be done to not to for the casinos to sort of wiggle out of it. And one of those is the uh, Gaming Commission, Nevada Gaming Commission, reports the payout return statistics by week. Nobody else does by week. But the problem is California comes to visit, late Friday through end of Sunday, and the casinos and the crowds come in, city doubles in size, whatever the number is, and people, in town, and the odds drop on the weekend and a little bit of Friday night, maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday. But that, to meet the state gaming requirements on theoretical returns, that means the odds are better during the week, the weekdays, up until noon or 2 o'clock on Friday. Yeah, they can adjust it, but not in like Washington where they don't have control of the odds. That's a lot of answer for a short question. Uh, let's see, Wise Virgin, do you have an article regards to highest attendance days for each month? For example, first major concert of the busy season, Valentine's. See, there's the national holidays, all right? Uh, I don't think I need to tell you what the national holidays are. What I will mention here is, uh, of course, the Super Bowl, or at least after the Super Bowl. No, it turns out the day before the Super Bowl. Okay, so now you know that one. Derby Day. Did you know there's a Derby Day? Did you know it's a big day at the casino? I was surprised when all these people with hats started showing up. I got there in the morning to Prairie Meadows, and suddenly there's no spaces in this huge parking lot in the middle of a cornfield. I'm just like, the former cornfield. And I'm like, why is there no parking spaces left in the casino? And why can't everybody's bumping against the back of my chair. And what are these big hats? And why do I smell like Cherry Jubilee? And so you learn your casino. Chinese New Year, 3 weeks ago. Chinese New Year. Turns out California, it's a big deal. Didn't see too much around in the Midwest here. Might have been something. I didn't. I was told it was impactful in California. So yes, national holidays, big time sporting events, whatever happens at your casino. Third one's on you. Uh, Interesting Wise Version. It's a little bit, he came up with a name. Welcome, member of the Slots Army. I don't know if we want to have like a militant voting group. I'm from Michigan, okay? We've got uh, organizations. That's a little bit militant. I'll write it down, put it on the list, okay? Let's see if that's the name for the baby. um, uh, Rick, I'm a self-employed artist with a decent-sized YouTube channel. Thinking of turning my hobby of casino hopping into a YouTube channel dedicated to slot play. Would this qualify as a legit biz? Oh, there's plenty out there. BC slots, NG slots, Ms. slots. There's a lot of people that do that. They get an agreement with the casino to record. I have some concerns I've mentioned elsewhere about copyright infringement of the slot machines, which the casino can't give away their rights for when they have an agreement. The casino's protecting themselves and not the artist. And I have some concerns that eventually that's going to get shut down and these businesses will have a serious problem. Or rather, yeah. What is it? Copyright infringement? You're an artist. You know that. 100K per episode, 100K per incident. But as long as you consider all that, there's plenty out there. I'd probably start with BC slots. He says on his webpage right very clearly, there are no winning strategies. And he will sit down in front of a slot machine and he'll record it. And he growing big, and he's making agreements with these casinos, and then he edit outs a lot of the wins. Then he's straight up about it. He says, "Well, people like to watch me lose. They like to see a lot of jackpots. So he figures out how much of the losing he needs to show, and how often, and that's what he does. I think you'd recognize that's not what I do. And I'm kind of stuck on, would this qualify as a legit biz? Take a look at his numbers on his YouTube. I always like to talk about the business, right? I should get back to talking about slots, but a legit biz, you'll have to decide that for yourself. You know about copyright infringement as an artist. It's not currently being pursued by the slots companies, these video locations, but will it? I chose not to do it. Partly because what I talk about, it's a little hard to show in that sort of video, and the other one is just the risk. All right, Rick, tax deductions for the amount of money spent. Just curious. I can't tell you what your taxes will be. Okay. If I talk about having a gambling record, to do gambling deductions, whatever they might be for your state. I don't even know if you have state income tax. There's a prior video, 2, 3, 4 ago on the question and answers sessions where we go over, I brought up the IRS and their advice on that. Can I get a shout out? Nick, Gers, hi Nick. Jingwalk, let me know if you have a question, Nick. Jingwalk, the high limit for payback for casinos is similar to gas station prices. The high limit for payback for casinos is similar to gas station prices. I suppose you mean that the markup? I'm not sure how that quite works. The big chains could price gas lower and force out the smaller mom and pop stores. The big chains don't quite do that. Their suppliers do that, and the state puts a tax on it. So it's not really, but I'm not good. I'm quibbling over the example. There is a band that the casinos have to operate within, and a lot of states, a lot of gaming regulations, whether they're tribal compacts or state gaming regulations, they have to operate within that band. And then, so you've got this band, right? Up, lower, and upper. But in order to have a successful business and not upset their players, they actually have to kind of keep the top one where it is and bring the bottom one up a little bit. The state usually makes it outside of the range that a successful business can operate in and still have a loving, business. Just look at all the stuff that's going on in Oklahoma. It's just very upsetting to a lot of people. And long term, it's going to hurt the tribal casinos. But in the meantime, they're making a buck. So straightforward. Slots Army, soldier for protecting the best strategies. Still a little militant, but thank you. Hey, John, I made it to the Indian Casino from Sacramento. 3 casinos within 45 minutes there, building one within 10 minutes away. Are you in California, Sacramento? Yeah, must be. What are you doing still here? You got like 50 seconds left. You should go to the casino. Thanks, Rick. Juan, hi, good afternoon. And smart slot souls. Oh, I gotta say that 3 times fast. Thank you for not being militant, Jan. I appreciate not being militant. I need to write these down. Email address, please. jon@professorslots.com. So I should be able to just do that. Yeah, send me your suggestions, whether you're listening to this later or now, and podcast or recording on YouTube. My email address is jon@professorslots.com. And send me your ideas for something better than slots enthusiasts. Not that it's terrible, but something better. And we've gotten two militant ones, and let's try to pick something where we begin as we plan to proceed. I believe in the revolution, okay, but we'll see how it goes. MSDGA, make slots play great again. I'm not touching that one. PGA, you want to have something with PGA in it? It's about golf, right? When is the best time to go to the casino? First off, don't go when they want you to be there. When they have a big promotion, they're set up to win. Not you, them. So avoid those. Also, the morning after seems to be working for some casinos, like 4 a.m. the day after a big event, because there's some business practices that are in place there. And check my Facebook groups, professorslots.com/ and then FB, and then the postal designation. So FBCT for Connecticut Slots Community on Facebook. SOS Club. All right. I got to record some of these down. Great session, everybody. And have fun. Be safe. And good luck. All right. Talk to you later. Bye.